So a good man from California sent me in a superposed skeet model the other day, and when I first picked it up, you know, it's a pretty clean looking gun. I mean, the wood's pretty good, the metal's good, shows a little blue where it's been kind of carried around the receiver. And the man had a few concerns that he wanted me to look at. One of them, he said when he fires the gun, the latch jumps open on him. And the minute I picked it up, I knew exactly what it was. I thought this would be a good gun for a video. And his complaint was that the forearm is real loose, and yeah, it wobbles up and down. Well, there the latch just jumped open on its own. I knew exactly what it was the minute I read his letter and I looked at the gun. It's a common ailment that happens on Browning Superposed, and I thought this would be good for a video, something good that we can talk about. I'll go ahead and, being as I laid all my screwdrivers down, let's see here if I've got the right one. Let's go ahead and take the forearm off, and we'll talk about the first issue. The forearm wobbling or wiggling around up and down on the gun, and the latch not latching. Without even taking the forearm off, I can tell you that it's a bent and probably nearly broken forearm bracket, which is pretty common on the Superposed. And as we pull off the forearm wood, I look at the bracket, and sure enough, I can see that this back bracket is badly bent. And looking at it, it is badly cracked. Excuse me, it is in the process of breaking into completely. And set this outside. Now we'll take some still photos so you can get up close and see exactly what I'm talking about here, because you won't be able to probably see them too well in the video. But this bracket is bent, and I put a straight edge on it. When I do that, it shows me that it's badly bent, and that's why the forearm was loose and wobbling around on the gun. And it is badly cracked. There's a big crack right down through here. There's a bad crack over here, even worse. This bracket is ready to break completely in half. And they do that. And why they do that, these brackets had a weakness in them. I don't know why they were manufactured this way, but there's a cutout right in this area here of this bracket, and this is the weak point of them. This weakens that bracket considerably. We repair them by simply TIG welding and filling this open area on the bracket right in through here, and that builds it up and stops it from breaking. We're lucky when these things break completely in half. If you send them to me, you're okay, I can salvage them. We're not going to fit a new bracket because that's very expensive. New brackets come in the rough from Browning, and they do mean in the rough it's like a block of steel. So when I get one, even though it's broken completely in half, I still will put those in a fixture I have, and I will TIG weld it back together, and then I build up this undercut area to reinforce it so it doesn't do that again. And the reason they break in the first place, well, it's weak in that area. And this is a semi-beaver tail, and sometimes they're full beaver tail forms. From the recoil of the gun, when the gun is new, every time the gun is fired, you've got a hold of the forearm, and that barrel jumps up. That's all stress on the bracket. It stresses that bracket right in that area right there. So we're going to straighten this bracket up where it should be, and we're going to TIG weld it up and reinforce it in that area, and that will salvage that. That will take care of that problem. The man, when he sent me that gun, that's the reason it doesn't latch too, by the way. We can talk about that. When this latch comes up and it latches into this bracket, the front part of it is drooped down, and it's not able to latch properly. And that's what's happened. There's a hook on this bracket on the takedown. Sure enough, it's not able to latch because this front part is dropped down. So that's why the gun doesn't latch, and that's why it jumps open when he fires it. Now, when I got the gun in, I also looked it over, and a lot of guys don't see this until it really gets bad. I noticed his top rib was really loose. It's loose from, there's a seam right here, you push it over, loose from about end to here to here. And I called the man, told him about that, and he said, I never noticed that. Well, here's what we have right here. loose rib. It's kind of working its way down. Look at that. It's all the way down to there. So before long, the bracket's going to break on this Super, and before long, you're going to have a rib laying in the next to it, completely removed. So those are some bad issues, bad issues. That's the two major issues that the gun's got. And then I pulled it apart, and this is a newer style gun, and so I always like to inspect the ejector extensions, because on these new styles, they break. That's what they do. And they start off with a good crack. Now, he's got a tube set with this gun, so these ejectors, when it came into me, were loose. And sure enough, I look at his extension on, it's usually the underbarrel, and we'll take some still photos so you can really see. This one is cracked from about here, extending all the way down. It is held on by a thread. I wouldn't give it 100 rounds. And what you're going to have in the next few boxes or two of shells you shoot, you're going to end up with this right here. This is a broken extension I replaced last week. I replaced several, I say several, like in a dozen or two of these every year. I just broke apart a couple more guns this past week, and they had very small cracks in the extensions, and they're working their way down. The reason they crack, and we've talked about this before, this is the new style extension. Browning changed from the split two-piece, went to this one part, this extension and ejector. And the ejector, actually, there's a little half-moon cutout in the extension. The ejector hooks into that, and that eliminates the two-part ejector system. And what happens, of course, we talked about this before, when this has got this half-moon cut made in the extension, it weakens it on the back side, and so they have a tendency to crack right at the back of the cutout and extend down, and they break like that every time. And here's one right here I just replaced just a few days ago that had broken completely in two. And this one is well on its way. I don't give it 100 rounds, and it's going to break. And the problem with that is, when that breaks and the ejector hammer hits that extension, and the ejector is then not linked into anything, the ejector goes out over your shoulder and into the grass. Or, you know, if you're lucky, you'll find it. If you're unlucky, you won't find it. This is very expensive to replace one of these. You're talking like $180 or so to replace an ejector, because they're all hand fit. The new ones come in the rough. The extensions are expensive in themselves. They're like $80, and time you spend $30 or so to fit it, and they do require fitting. You've got some money in the extension, but when you lose both pieces, you're really going to be spending some money. So the gun's got a lot of issues. Got the loose top rib about down to the mid bead here. That's about halfway. So the rib's on its way off too. So that was a bad problem. And then the gun's very loose. As it locks up, you can see the top levers coming over to the left of center. So the gun badly needs a rebuild on top of it. And you can see anytime, you know, this top lever should be like over in here. Now we're going to fit a new locking bolt. When we do that, that's going to tighten it all back up. We're going to tighten it on the hinge at the same time. So this gun, as it came into me, and my customer was a bit shocked when I sent him an invoice on it. He said, I never noticed any of that. And I know he didn't, because it's just, you know, the gun's pretty clean looking. It just doesn't look like it would have issues like that. But it does, and these are some of the most serious problems that a Browning Superposed can have. The bracket issue and the ejector extensions, that's common. The rebuild's not a big deal. You know, it's like $3 1/4, $3.50 to rebuild it completely, hinge pin, locking bolt, replace the springs, firing pins if necessary, what have you. But this is a pretty serious fix here. And we will TIG weld this up, and I'll show you what it looks like after it's welded up, so you can kind of see what we're working against. Now this one here, this particular gun has the new style ejector hammers, which don't break. The early ones, they were a slimmer hammer that didn't have this beefed up area in the back here, and they break. Pretty common. They'll break right through this area right in here. But it has new style hammers, and they're fine. Lucky for him, they won't be breaking. But the gun does have some serious issues, so we'll begin by TIG welding it up and starting from there. So I'm sitting here at my trusty TIG welder. Let me tell you something. a gun shop has to have a TIG welder. If you're serious about gunsmithing and what have you. I live and die by this machine. And we're going to TIG weld this bracket up. It's badly bent. Now I have straightened this bracket. I took the straight edge and I simply straightened it by laying it on my bench with a piece of wood under it, and I hit it with a rawhide mallet up on top. And I wanged it several times until I got that bracket straight. So we are now straightened, and we're going to now fire up the old trusty TIG welder, and we're going to weld and reinforce this bracket. We're going to weld it right down through those cracks. We're going to eliminate the possibility of this thing ever doing this again. So here we go. We're going to do this at a strategic location here, and we get the back off my trusty Heliarc IE TIG welder, and I have welded this bracket, and right where we've talked about, remember those cutouts it had? They are now gone. They've built up with weld. This will reinforce that bracket. Now, from here I have a lot of cleanup work to do. I've got to really get in there and remove this excess weld inside. It's tricky to do all that. And we're going to clean all that up, dress it down, and of course we have to glue the bracket after that. But that will cure the jumping open problems, that will cure the looseness on the forearm, and it's going to work out a whole lot better like this. And this bracket will not ever do that again. So that's what she looks like from here. So we're in the process of just finishing up our little superpose that came in that had lots and lots of issues. We had the very badly bent bracket that was on the verge of breaking in two, and as you can see, we've now blued it, and we have welded it and built this bridge up that this cutout that they put in these brackets that weakens them. We have built that up now to where it's gone, and that will reinforce that bracket. This bracket will not bend again. We had to do a lot of refitting, removing the weld to make sure that our takedown lever would go back in place like it was supposed to, and it did. We've replaced our badly, which you can't see in this I know, but we've replaced this badly cracked ejector extension. We now have the new extension in place. I'm getting these things in just more and more with, just anytime I get one of these in with these new style extensions, that's the first thing I look for is a crack, because they're famous for doing it. So we straightened this bracket. It's not bent down any longer, and when I straightened it, the latch started latching the way it's supposed to, because when I got it in, the man said his gun wouldn't latch, and that was because the front part of this bracket was badly bent down, and this hook that hooks in this area right here was not able to latch. So straightening the bracket took care of all those issues, and we're going to go ahead and put it back together. And when you assemble these, the bracket has to go back on the gun, and now it's in place and it won't come off. But now we're ready to put our forearm on. I put it on earlier just to kind of test it, and it really goes on nice and snug now. It's not loose any longer. It's tightened up just the way it's supposed to be on the gun. I'm going to have to step over and let me grab a little plug I left behind to tighten these brackets. There's a little gap in it here where the wood's not seated all the way down. Sometimes you have to take and I take a piece of wood, plug, and put it behind the bracket. Then I can push the wood down all the way on the bracket. There it went. So then we'll put our screw in place, and I'm not going to tighten it down all the way just yet. It's refit and everything's ready to go. But now I can feel a huge difference on this gun. When before the bracket would just flop around and the wood was all loose. Now it's nice and snug on the barrels, and to remove it, you'll have to manually kind of reach down and pull a little harder to get it to slide, because now the forearm is back up against the barrels where it belongs. It's been tightened, and when we put it on the gun, and we've also rebuilt this gun, I'll show you how that's turned out. Now when I go to put my bracket on, when I push it down, it's got a little resistance, which is the way it's supposed to be. That's because the bracket's tight. It's up against the barrels. It's no longer bent and flopping around. And the takedown latch latches the way it's supposed to, because the little hook is able to get down on that bracket where it should be. So now when the man shoots the gun, when he was shooting it before, I'm assuming from talking to him that this takedown bracket, after a few shots, you shoot it and pretty soon you feel it working its way down, and next thing you know it's kind of hanging down, it's open. That's because it doesn't latch. So when I put them into, if you push them down with your fingers, especially after they've been tightened and rebuilt, sometimes they don't latch all the way. So you'll see me kind of putting it in position and giving it a pop, my hand jumps in. After a while, after this gun's been rebuilt, so that's why that's tight. After a while, you can just push it down with your fingers. Now, we rebuilt this gun, and it's nice and snug on the hinge. In fact, you'll notice that the barrels don't really want to fall open. You have to kind of shake them down. That's the way I like them. And I like to leave, here's your top lever, where your top lever belongs. Way to the right of center. And I like to leave them way over there. At Browning, we were kind of taught to put it along the edge of the top tang. And I do that, but sometimes I fudge a little bit and leave them just a little farther over. My theory on that is it's going to give you more wear. It's going to shoot a lot longer before it comes back to the center. So I'm doing you a favor when I leave them away. I've had guys call up and say, you know what, there's something wrong with my gun, you rebuild it, and I can see the serial number now. They're talking about seeing the serial number. And I say, yeah, that's good. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's going to work its way over. I left it a little over further to the right of center than they do at the factory, but I do that on purpose. So this gun's been rebuilt. We have test fired it. Everything works. The rib's been put back on. It was loose. I got to put my sight beads in yet. I have my new ejector extensions in place, and that gun is back to a really good condition now. It's going to shoot for thousands and thousands of rounds before it needs a rebuild or anything else. So that's what we came up against when this gun came in, and our customer was a bit surprised when we sent him a quote on it, because he didn't realize the rib was loose, and he knew the bracket, there was something wrong, that the latch wouldn't stay lashed, and the gun was pretty loose, and he knew there was something going on. He didn't know what it was, but it turned out to be some pretty serious issues that this gun had. But we've got all straightened out now. It's tight and rebuilt, and the man can get it back, and he can shoot it for thousands and thousands of rounds, and he's not going to have to worry about it. We won't see him again for some time to come.